Kia ora and welcome back. Graham Smith from ALEC here again. This presentation is part 2 of our series on the New Zealand context, which is of course section 1 of the NCALNE Voc, relating to the New Zealand context of course. So you might want to have your study guide or assessment guide, other materials handy as well. Okay, here's our heads up slide again. This just gives us a chance to have a look at where we're up to in the course, and we're up to number 1 at the moment. And as we move around the dial here, we'll go through the other aspects of the course and return to this diagram to situate you in terms of what we're doing. So this is the infographic from literacynumeracypro.com. Okay, last time I left you with the question why. Why do we have this problem of low levels of adult literacy and numeracy in New Zealand? We talked about the data from the All survey and the fact that maybe half of our population sit below the baseline for literacy and numeracy in New Zealand. So hopefully you've been thinking about that, thinking about why we have this situation, and thinking about your own learners perhaps and what it means for your people. Hopefully you've also started to think what particular literacy and numeracy challenges your learners might face. So hopefully we can deal with answers to these, especially to do with your situation and context as we move through the other parts of the course. But let's just have a look now at some of the reasons. There's no one particular reason. This is a list of a whole lot of reasons, and most of these tend to come out of our discussions with people doing training. So just very quickly, if I go through some of these. Technological change is one that people will talk about a lot in terms of something that contributes to low levels of, contributing to low levels of adult literacy and numeracy, or at least compounding the fact that we already have people with difficulties in this area. Learning disabilities is another one. Poverty is another. Low self-expectations. ESOL, one of those acronyms. The ESOL, of course, is English as a second language, or if you speak English as another language. Student mobility. This is not to do with mobile phones, of course, but it's to do with students moving around for different reasons, not living in the same place continuously, having to go to different schools and so on. Sometimes mum and dad might have seasonal work, or other times people are just moving around. The education system is another focus. Sometimes it hasn't served our learners as well as it could. Family problems, of course. Lack of time, lack of use, and another one, increasing standards for what counts as literacy and numeracy. And this is something that you sometimes see in the newspaper with regards to the primary school and the high school sector. What's the impact, or what are the impacts for us, for our society or our work, our communities, for our learners on a personal level? What's the impact for training? What's the impact for our business? So lots of questions there. Some of the things that get discussed relate to attracting, recruiting and training learners, that if you have learners with literacy and numeracy difficulties, even if you can get them into your training, sometimes it's difficult to retain them. So there's always a cost involved with that as well. So something to think about. If you did something about their literacy and numeracy needs, would they stay longer? Would it be easier to recruit them? Would the training experience be more productive? In terms of the impact on training, there are a lot of things. Often we find that there is an impact on the quality of the learning, their understanding and comprehension of what they're doing, and of course that leads through to the impact on the unit standards, the credits, the qualifications and so on that they might be gaining. But there's also other impacts on things like their own self-confidence and willingness to learn, their ability to be a self-directed learner. Basically, if you have low literacy and low numeracy, you can't really be self-directed and you need a lot of supervision. And of course, there's also impacts on families and communities as well. There's an impact on work. Some people that do this course are involved in some kind of training that has a commercial focus. Perhaps it's part of a business operation, and the big deal here relates to productivity. The reason that governments are interested in literacy and numeracy is that there's an argument that says if you can increase people's literacy and numeracy abilities, they will become more productive workers, more productive members of society. So that's quite a big deal. But there's other things as well. There's a legal impact. health and safety, wastage, rework, job choices, life choices, skill shortages in key trades and so on, as well as career progression. So lots of different impacts in terms of how it affects work and the bottom line of business. We think that as good tutors and trainers, the more you can be deliberate and explicit and embed literacy and numeracy into your training, the more you're going to add value to what you do. And this will have the effect of not solving every problem, but it will solve some of the problems and contribute towards better training outcomes and just better outcomes in general for everybody. One question we like to talk about is this one: does numeracy matter more? And we think it might do. There's a reading of the same name in the book of readings that comes in your study pack if you've got that version. It's also online. You can download it off our website, and it relates to the specific impact of literacy and the specific impact of low numeracy in the 21st century workplace. So it's in our book of readings, and also connects with the all survey data that we talked about in another presentation. Okay, this question here: what are we doing about low literacy and low numeracy levels? Now this, of course, we're talking about the initiatives that we have in New Zealand at the moment. So you might know some of these already. You might know what's going on inside your own organisation, but it's also good to know what's going on nationally as well. Here's a very brief list. There's more information in the study resources. You can also go to the internet and look these up. But here we go, the All Survey, I've talked about that. We have workplace initiatives in New Zealand. We also have intensive literacy numeracy initiatives. The adult literacy educator grants that partially subsidise the professional development is a current initiative that's still going. In New Zealand we also have a national centre for literacy and numeracy. There is a national assessment tool. There are industry training organisation embedded projects that have been run over several years, and there's also the pathwaysawarua.com initiative, which we think is fantastic. Make sure you check that one out. Finally, on the right hand side there of my screen, PAC, that's a new acronym. This is the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies. This is going to replace the All Survey data in 2016. So that's something that's very new and will happen over the next couple of years. The Learning Progressions, of course, is a major initiative excuse me, in literacy and numeracy in our country. There's 7 in total. It's more than I can fit on the screen here. And the idea is that these now underpin assessment and teaching and learning in New Zealand. It's the idea is it's a shared language to talk about what's going on. So more on those as we go through the course. But they're important. If you've got the hard copies, have a flick through them. If you haven't got the hard copies, they are digital and online through the Waikato University Literacy and Numeracy for Adults.com website. So one question for homework: can you name the items on the covers? There you go, something to think about. Okay, this slide here, we like to use this to talk about the fact that many of our participants and graduates go on to do things that have an impact on their whole industry. So often as a tutor and a trainer, you're in a classroom or a commercial workshop or a kitchen or some kind of trades or vocational environment. This professional development training allows you to take your subject expertise, embed literacy and numeracy into the instruction that you normally deliver, and come out with something and deliver something that actually has a bigger impact perhaps than what you would normally do. And often there are things that our students create that go on to affect their whole industry. So I've got examples of that in another presentation, but just like to put it out there for now. This is how you can use your subject knowledge, your subject expertise to permeate your whole industry and workplace. It's a great opportunity. Okay, what resources do you know about or do you currently use for literacy and numeracy? There might be nothing, in which case go and have a look around, have a look on the internet, or you might have a whole bank of resources that people have purchased or developed inside your organisation. So some of these things need to find their way into your first assessment task. There's some ideas on this in the study pack if you're short on ideas yourself. Also in the study guide there's some information on organisations, specialist organisations that provide literacy and numeracy expertise. And ALEC, that's our organisation, is one of these. The National Centre based at Waikato University is another. So there are more as well. Make sure you have a read up, and you should be familiar with at least half a dozen or so around the country. Interesting to find out, has your organisation worked with some of these other specialist organisations? Has it been effective? Could you work with them in the future? So just a couple of things to think about there. What's in it for you? What's in it for me? Well, we think the benefits of improving literacy and numeracy fall into two related categories, and these are sustainability and getting results. And both of these are things you need to focus on for survival, really, moving forward in the education sector. So if you are funded, in particular, from government, improving literacy and numeracy skills is likely to add to the sustainability or the survival of your organisation and your ability to get the results that you need to keep these funding agencies happy. So welcome to the performance-driven jobs economy. It's the way education's heading. All right, just leave you with a couple of things there on the screen to think about. Attracting, training and retaining. Hard times around the country often for education providers, and if you can do your part at working with adults who have these difficulties, you can attract and train and retain much more effectively perhaps than what you're doing at the moment. So we'll look forward to seeing what you can do as we go through the course. Great, thanks very much for listening. Kia ora.